There are words that carry venom disguised as honey, and there are souls who have learned to use words as invisible weapons against the female heart. Have you ever felt that strange chill when someone said something that, even sounding beautiful, left your soul uneasy? That feeling that something wasn't right, even when your mind tried to convince you otherwise? Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, taught us that our soul possesses an ancestral wisdom that recognizes energetic patterns long before our conscious mind can decipher them. And when it comes to relationships, this wisdom becomes even more precious, as it protects us from connections that can drain our spiritual essence and lead us away from our greater purpose. There's a secret language that certain souls use to manipulate and control, and this language manifests through seemingly innocent phrases, but ones that carry dense and destructive energy. According to Edgar Cayce's teachings, when a soul chooses the path of manipulation and control in its relationships, it's repeating old karmic patterns, often originating in past lives where power was misused. These souls come into this life with the opportunity to learn about true love and mutual respect, but they don't always choose the path of evolution. And when they don't, they become dark mirrors reflecting our own unhealed wounds, our deepest fears, and our unmet emotional needs. The first of these venomous phrases is one that sounds like a declaration of ownership disguised as love. "You're mine, and I won't let anyone get close to what's mine." When a man utters these words, even with a smile on his lips, he's revealing a soul that confuses love with possessiveness, that doesn't understand that true love liberates and never imprisons. Edgar Cayce taught us that each soul is a sovereign being, created in the image and likeness of the Creator, and that no soul possesses another. When someone tries to possess us, they're trying to diminish our divine light, reducing us to objects instead of recognizing our sacred nature. This possessive mentality has deep roots in past lives, where temporal power was confused with love, where kings and lords believed they could possess not only lands and riches, but also hearts and souls. When you hear these words, your soul is being alerted that this person hasn't yet learned to truly love, hasn't yet understood that love is a gift freely offered, never a chain imposed. The second red flag comes disguised as paternalistic concern. "You're too innocent for this world. You need someone like me to protect you." These words carry a paternalistic energy that infantilizes and disempowers, suggesting that you're not capable of navigating life with your own wisdom and discernment. Cayce taught us that each soul comes into this life with a specific purpose and with all the tools necessary to fulfill its mission. When someone tries to convince us that we're too fragile or too innocent for life, they're trying to disconnect us from our own inner strength, from our innate ability to discern between good and evil, between what elevates us and what degrades us. This attitude reveals a soul that in past lives may have used protection as a form of control, that learned to feel important by making others feel small and dependent. It's a subtle form of manipulation that starts with feigned care and ends with real isolation, where you gradually find yourself separated from your own perceptions, your own strength, your own light. The third phrase carries the venom of destructive comparison. "You're not like other women, you're special, so you need to prove you deserve this specialness." Here lies one of the most sophisticated manipulations, as it begins with a compliment that massages the ego, but ends with a demand that can never be satisfied. When a man separates you from other women, portraying them as inferior and you as superior, he's creating a dynamic where you need to constantly prove your worth, where your specialness depends on his expectations and whims. Edgar Cayce taught us that all souls are unique and sacred expressions of the Creator, that there's no hierarchy among souls, only different expressions of the same divine light. When someone tries to convince us that we're special compared to other people, they're sowing seeds of separation in our soul, disconnecting us from the universal sorority that unites all women. This mentality has roots in past lives, where competition and comparison were used to divide and conquer, where women were pitted against each other to serve male interests. When you hear these words, your soul is being alerted that this person doesn't see you as an equal, but as a trophy to be won and displayed. The fourth red flag is disguised as wisdom and experience. You need to learn to be a real woman, and I'll teach you. These words carry a spiritual arrogance that suggests your current femininity is inadequate, that you need to be molded and reshaped according to this person's limited view of what it means to be a woman. Cayce taught us that femininity is a sacred creative force that expresses itself in infinite ways, that each woman carries within her the ancestral wisdom of all the women who came before her. When someone tries to teach us how to be a woman, they are trying to replace our inner wisdom with their own prejudices and limitations. This attitude reveals a soul that in past lives may have held positions of religious or social authority, where they defined roles and behaviors for women, where they used power to limit instead of liberate. It's a form of control that starts with subtle criticisms about how you dress, how you speak, how you behave, and gradually evolves into a complete reshaping of your personality and essence. When you hear these words, your soul is being alerted that this person doesn't love who you are, but rather an idealized version of who they believe you should be. The fifth and most dangerous of the poisonous phrases is the one that directly attacks your connection to your own reality. You're exaggerating, being dramatic, making things up. These words are like acid on the soul, as they attack your ability to trust your own perceptions and feelings. When a man consistently minimizes your concerns, invalidates your emotions, and questions your sanity, he is practicing a form of psychological violence that can leave deep scars on your soul. Edgar Cayce taught us that our emotions are sacred messengers that inform us about what is happening in our energetic environment. When someone tries to convince us that our feelings are exaggerated or unreal, they're trying to disconnect us from our own inner compass, from our ability to navigate life with discernment and wisdom. This attitude reveals a soul that, in past lives, may have used gaslighting as a way to maintain power over others, that learned to distort reality for their own ends. It's a form of abuse that leaves no visible marks, but that can destroy a woman's confidence in her own ability to perceive and interpret the world around her. But why are certain souls drawn to relationships where these toxic dynamics manifest? According to Edgar Cayce, nothing happens by chance in our lives. Every person we meet, every relationship we experience, every pain we feel is connected to karmic patterns that our soul came to resolve in this life. When a woman repeatedly finds herself in relationships where she is manipulated, controlled, or diminished, her soul is being called to heal old wounds and learn important lessons about self-love and discernment. Perhaps in past lives, she was conditioned to believe that her worth depended on male approval, that her security lay in dependence and not independence. Perhaps she learned to confuse love with sacrifice, to believe that the more she suffered for someone, the more love she was demonstrating. These karmic wounds manifest as repetitive patterns in our current life, where we unconsciously find ourselves attracted to people who treat us the same way we were treated in past lives. It's as if our soul is trying to solve an old equation, trying to transform a story of pain into a story of healing. But healing only comes when we develop the awareness necessary to recognize these patterns and consciously choose a different path. Edgar Cayce taught us that we have free will to break negative karmic cycles, that we can choose to learn through love instead of learning through pain. When you begin to recognize these 5 poisonous phrases, when your soul awakens to the warning signs that have been whispering in your ear, you are taking the first step toward karmic healing. You are choosing to honor your inner wisdom, choosing to protect your divine light from those who have not yet learned to truly love. And in this moment of awakening, I want to invite you to join a community of souls who are also on this journey of healing and self-discovery. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because together we can share this ancestral wisdom and support each other on this walk back to self-love and our true essence. The process of healing these karmic wounds is not simple or quick. It requires that you develop a new relationship with your own intuition, that you learn to trust the whispers of your soul even when your mind is confused. It requires that you practice loving discernment, that you learn to see people as they truly are, not as you would like them to be. It requires that you cultivate the courage to walk away from situations that diminish your light, even when it means facing temporary loneliness or the disapproval of others. Edgar Cayce taught us that our soul has a memory that transcends this life, that carries within it the lessons learned and the wounds suffered in all our previous existences. When a woman repeatedly finds herself attracted to men who diminish or control her, her soul is usually reliving old patterns where she learned to associate love with suffering, where she was conditioned to believe that her worth depended on how useful or pleasing she could be to others. These wounds may originate in lives where she was someone's property, where she had no right to her own voice or choice, where she was taught that her happiness was less important than that of others. But these wounds also carry within them the potential for the greatest healing, as they offer us the opportunity to consciously choose a different path. When you recognize these patterns in your current life, when you develop the courage to say no to relationships that dim your light, you are not only healing yourself in this life, but also healing all versions of yourself who suffered similar situations in past lives. It's as if you're sending a wave of healing through time, transforming ancestral pain into present-day wisdom. Healing also involves understanding that the men who utter these poisonous phrases are not necessarily evil or malicious. They too are souls on a journey, also carrying karmic wounds and patterns that need healing. Perhaps in past lives, they were conditioned to believe that power over others was synonymous with strength, that control was a form of love, that domination was a masculine right. Their souls are also trying to solve ancient equations, also being challenged to learn new ways of relating to the feminine. The difference is that some choose the path of healing and others continue repeating the same destructive patterns. When you develop compassion for these wounded souls, but at the same time maintain clear and firm boundaries, you are practicing what Edgar Cayce called discriminative love, loving the soul but not accepting behaviors that diminish your own light. It's possible to have compassion for someone and still choose not to have that person in your life. It's possible to send love and healing to someone from a distance while protecting your own energy and well-being. The process of recognizing these poisonous phrases is often accompanied by a feeling of painful awakening, as if you were waking up from a dream where you felt safe, even if that safety was illusory. It's common to feel anger, sadness, confusion, or even guilt when you finally recognize that you have been manipulated or controlled. These feelings are natural and necessary for the healing process. Anger is your soul reclaiming its right to respect and dignity. Sadness is your heart mourning the time and energy invested in relationships that did not nourish your essence. Confusion is your mind trying to reorganize your perception of reality. Guilt is your soul taking responsibility for your choices, even if those choices were made from a place of wounding and unconsciousness. But it's important to remember that recognizing these patterns doesn't mean you were a passive victim of manipulation. According to Edgar Cayce, our soul always has an active participation in the creation of our experiences. Perhaps you were drawn to these relationships because your soul knew they would offer you important opportunities for healing and growth. Perhaps they were necessary mirrors to show wounds that needed healing, to develop spiritual muscles that were atrophied. Perhaps they were teachers in disguise, teaching through contrast what you truly want and deserve in a relationship. When you embrace this perspective of spiritual responsibility without blaming or diminishing yourself, you regain your personal power. You step out of the role of victim and assume the role of conscious co-creator of your reality. You recognize that if you had the power to attract painful experiences, you also have the power to attract experiences of healing and true love. You understand that every toxic relationship you've experienced was also a missed opportunity for self-love, a chance to practice discernment and self-protection. Healing these karmic wounds also involves learning to recognize the signs of true and healthy love. If poisonous words dim your light, the words of true love expand it. If manipulation leaves you confused about your own reality, true love confirms and validates your perceptions. If control makes you feel small and dependent, true love encourages you to shine in your fullness and independence. If possessiveness isolates you from other people, true love celebrates your connections and supports your network of healthy relationships. A man who truly loves will not try to possess you, but will celebrate your freedom and individuality. He will not try to protect you from a world he considers too dangerous for you, but will trust in your wisdom and strength to navigate life's challenges. He will not put you in competition with other women, but will recognize that each person is unique and special in their own way. He will not try to mold you according to his expectations of what a woman should be, but will fall in love with who you already are. He will not invalidate your feelings or perceptions, but will honor them as valid and important expressions of your inner experience. These differences may seem obvious when described in this way, but in practice, especially when we are dealing with unhealed karmic wounds, it can be challenging to distinguish between true love and sophisticated manipulation. That's why Edgar Cayce emphasized so much the importance of developing our ability to attune to our inner wisdom, to learn to listen to the whispers of our soul before they become cries of pain. Your intuition is like a subtle energy detector that is constantly analyzing the vibrations of the people around you. When someone speaks to you, your soul is not only hearing the words, but also feeling the energy behind those words. It's perceiving whether the intention is to uplift or diminish, to nurture or drain, to honor or control. Often, this perception manifests as a physical sensation, a tightness in the chest, a tension in the stomach, a shiver down the spine. Other times, it manifests as an emotional sensation, a sudden sadness, an inexplicable anxiety, a strange feeling of being watched or judged. When you learn to honor these subtle sensations, even when your mind is trying to convince you that you're overreacting or being paranoid, you're developing what Edgar Cayce called spiritual discernment. You're learning to distinguish between your own insecurity and a legitimate perception of something not being right. You're building the confidence to trust your own perception of reality, even when others try to convince you otherwise. This process of developing spiritual discernment is gradual and requires consistent practice. Start by paying attention to your physical and emotional sensations when you're with different people. Notice how you feel when you're with people who genuinely love and support you, and compare that to how you feel when you're with people who criticize or try to control you. Begin to trust these sensations as valid information about the energetic quality of your relationships. It's also important to remember that karmic healing isn't a linear process. You may have days where you feel strong and clear about your boundaries, and other days where you feel vulnerable and tempted to accept behaviors you know aren't healthy. You may have moments of great clarity about what you deserve in a relationship, and moments of doubt where you question whether you're being too demanding. These fluctuations are normal and part of the healing process. Edgar Cayce taught us that healing happens in layers, like peeling an onion. Each time you choose to honor your inner wisdom and walk away from a situation that diminishes your light, you're healing a layer of old wounds. Each time you practice self-love and set healthy boundaries, you're strengthening your spiritual muscles. Each time you choose to trust your intuition, even when others question your perception, you're developing your inner authority. The beauty of this process is that as you heal your own karmic wounds, you automatically raise the vibration of all the relationships around you. You become a living example of how it's possible to love without diminishing yourself, how it's possible to be vulnerable without being a victim, how it's possible to be compassionate without being a doormat. Your healing becomes a gift not only to yourself, but to all the other souls who are observing your example and learning that there's a different way to relate. When you become a woman who recognizes and walks away from the 5 poisonous phrases, you're not only protecting yourself, but also educating the people around you about how you expect to be treated. You're setting a standard of respect and dignity that positively influences all your relationships. You're showing that it's possible to have discernment without being judgmental, that it's possible to have boundaries without being closed off, that it's possible to be strong without being harsh. And so, your healing journey becomes a bridge for other souls who are also learning to recognize their own worth and power. You become part of a network of light that's helping to raise the collective consciousness about what it means to truly love. You become an instrument of healing not only for your own karmic wounds, but also for the ancestral wounds that have been passed down through generations. Remember, your soul chose to be here at this moment in human history for a specific reason. You're not just living your own life, but also participating in the collective healing of old patterns that have limited humanity's potential to truly love. Each time you choose to honor your own light and walk away from relationships that diminish it, you're contributing to the evolution of human consciousness. You're helping to create a world where true love is the norm, not the exception. So, when you hear those 5 poisonous phrases, when your soul whispers that something isn't right, when your intuition alerts you to unhealthy energies, remember that you have the power to choose. You have the right to walk away. You have the authority to protect your own light. You have the wisdom to recognize the difference between true love and sophisticated manipulation. And you have the courage to consciously choose a different path, a path that honors your divine nature and allows your soul to shine in its fullness. The question echoing in your soul now is, are you willing to trust the ancestral wisdom that lives within you, to honor the whispers of your intuition, and to choose relationships that nourish your essence instead of diminishing it? Your soul already knows the answer. It's just waiting for you to have the courage to hear it.